The rain lashed the windows of the old seaside cottage. Inside, I clutched a yellowed envelope. My great-aunt Millie, a woman I barely knew, had left me everything.
The lawyer droned on about deeds and titles, but Sarah wasn't listening.
My gaze fell on the faded photograph tucked inside the envelope. A woman with my own dark eyes stared back. The inscription on the back read, Rose and James Seabrook, 1948. A shiver ran down my spine. Who were these people? And why had Millie kept their picture hidden for so long? The next morning dawned bright and clear, the storm a distant memory. Armed with the photograph and a heart full of questions, I set out to explore Seabrook. The salty air whipped at my hair as I walked along the windswept beach. I stopped at the local museum, drawn by its quaint charm and the promise of history. Inside, dusty exhibits displayed relics of the town's seafaring past. I showed the curator the photograph.
Ah, Rose and James, he sighed. A tragic tale, that.
The curator's words sent Sarah on a quest to piece together the fragments of a forgotten past. She spent her days poring over old newspapers and microfilms in the town library. She sought out the town's elders, their memories, a treasure trove of half-forgotten stories. Slowly, a picture began to emerge.
Rose, a beautiful young woman full of life, had fallen in love with James, a handsome fisherman. Their love was the stuff of local legend. But their happiness was tragically short-lived. James's fishing boat was caught in a storm and lost at sea, taking him and their unborn child with it. Echoes in the tide. Sarah stood at the edge of the harbour, the waves crashing against the pier. The air was thick with the scent of salt and the cries of gulls. She could almost hear the echoes of laughter and the mournful wail of sea shanties carried on the breeze. Closing her eyes, she imagined Rose, heartbroken and alone, standing on this very spot. It was then that Sarah noticed it, a small silver locket half buried in the sand. Brushing it off, she gasped. It was engraved with a single initial, R. Suddenly, a wave of understanding washed over her. Rose hadn't been alone. She had been pregnant with James's child. A shared history. Back at the cottage, Sarah pulled out her own worn photo album. There, tucked between pictures of her parents and grandparents, was a faded photograph of a young woman with familiar dark eyes. Her grandmother. The inscription on the back read, Mum, aged 16. The truth, like the rising tide, rushed in. Rose was her grandmother, and James, the fisherman lost at sea, was her grandfather. The inheritance wasn't just a cottage, it was a legacy of love, loss, and resilience. Sarah stood at the window, gazing out at the sea. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sense of peace. She was finally home.